Health authorities say Korea's Omicron wave is retreating. Accordingly, social restrictions are being eased, while plans are in the works to enhance protection among the elderly as we seek to move forward in our fight against COVID-19. For more, I have Dr. Kim Seung-taek from Institute Pasteur Korea. Dr. Kim, welcome back.
Good afternoon.
I also have Professor Lee Hoon-sang from Yonsei University. Professor Lee, it's a pleasure to see you again.
Thank you for having me today.
Professor, Dr. Kim, that is Korea past the worst of the Omicron wave, do you think?
Well, I want to be very careful on people saying that we actually just passed over the peak. But some numbers, some key numbers, such as like a basic reproduction number, sometimes called an R0 or R0. That number actually suggests that we are actually just passing the peak case numbers. So this is quite promising. But for we can actually just suggest maybe some short-term projection and the long-term projection of COVID-19. And then in the case of the short-term, just a period, these days we are actually experiencing very explosive infection. So which means that in addition to just previous very wide vaccination effort in our country, but some other unvaccinated people now are just getting immunity by the natural infection. So the short-term projection is now so many people are just get immunity against some potential maybe some reinfection or other the viruses. So in the short term, we will just see some decreasing number of COVID-19 cases. But for the long term, the cases are a little bit tricky. One of the things is that we do not know whether any other different kind of the variant might emerge. And also we have to also consider our immune status. There are two different aspects of immune status. One is the humoral immunity. This is basically antibody production. And the second one is the cellular immunity. But this antibody is actually present in our body is actually gradually decrease over the couple of or several months. So in the end, this antibody present in our body will decrease. Then we will somehow will be vulnerable to reinfection in the future. But the good thing is that our cellular immunity, which is actually conferred by the so-called T cell, is very robust and long-lasting. So my guess is that we will see maybe some increase of some increasing COVID-19 in the future, long-term, some future, but probably a smaller number of severe cases.
Right, hopefully then. Professor Yi, there has been quite a bit of debate about the practicality of restricting business hours at drinking and dining establishments as part of efforts to curb the spread of COVID-19. What are your thoughts on this?
So I think recently the merit of the restriction I think has gone down somewhat. And I think there is quite a valid reason, I think, for reducing the level of restrictions. But I think the important aspect is the speed and the magnitude of the reduction in the restrictions. So I would be still a little bit careful to lift everything up at all of a sudden because when people are interacting way much more than current level to up to some level, then still we are seeing some of the transmission that is still going on, and breakthrough infection is still possible. So while it is probably the time that we have to recognize the reduction of the merit of the restriction, but still in terms of lifting up in wholesome way, I think I would be a little bit careful.
Right. And Dr. Kim, it has been said that Omicron is relatively milder in nature compared to other variants. Having said that, how do you explain, though, the tragic numbers of losses of lives, that is, related to COVID-19 here in the country?
Well, that's actually, it's not an easy question to answer. And then the government said that maybe some underlying medical conditions, maybe play a major role, because those people are intrinsically very vulnerable people without even some COVID-19. So there might be some other explanation, but some people say that this is very special, especially in Korea, because in other foreign countries, and in the very early the pandemic, this COVID-19 pandemic, many people have actually, people with some high risk, like elderly group and the underlying medical condition, they have already died. But in Korea, because of the very just efficient quarantine procedure and social distancing, we are very successful just maintaining the very low level of COVID-19 cases. So that might just a little bit of can just explain why we are seeing now just a little bit more of just a fatality compared to just other countries.
Professor, authorities are planning to conduct yet another antibody testing. What do you suppose is the importance of this testing at this particular point in our fight against COVID-19?
So this, as for this large-scale antibody testing of about 10,000 people, I think it can be a valid step to establish the population serological prevalence level so that we can have a more scientific ground about how to approach this situation and what is the level of the people's immunity in the population. But still there is some concern, and I would be still also careful because conducting antibody testing on 10,000 people at very limited amount of time, it is just a large scale of operation in itself. So conducting the study in very valid way, in very scientific way, it will be probably necessary to have a quite good designing of the studies and quite good preparation. So to have a valid result of these studies, I would be a little bit careful hastening the study in very limited amount of time.
Right, because it's a daunting task in itself.
Sure.
Dr. Kim, the Wall Street Journal, as my colleagues mentioned earlier, claims Korea has the world's lowest COVID-19 fatality and has forecast that the country may be among the first to usher in an endemic phase of the pandemic. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, the very small number just fatality, that's actually just the accounts of our just efforts for the last 2 years. And then the reason is that, well, just as of now, the number one the reason for that is that our high vaccination rate now is just more than 85% of vaccination. That's really high. And then now although it's not, the supply is not really just sufficient, but we have somehow tried to very efficiently use the oral drugs that is now available, and then the Paxlovid now we are approved the molnupiravir, and so that might be another alternative option for the treating a patient with some high risk. And then before the vaccination, earlier pandemic, maybe year 2020, before the vaccine is available. Now Korea was very successful in a quarantine procedure and then maintaining very good social distancing guidelines. So that's why now we have seen very low number, number of fatality, and then that's actually expressing why. And then for this low fatality means that maybe we are as this journal indicates that we are maybe just coming near to the some endemic phase, maybe so-called living with COVID-19.
Right. And Professor, on the vaccination front, what do you suppose is the importance of a second booster dose despite the declining trend in Omicron infections here in the country?
So second booster dose or the fourth shot had been conducted in countries like Israel, and also in the United States. Even the President Biden has gotten the fourth shot, the second booster shots. So I think there can be some of the valid reason because the immunity can wane as the time passes. The first shot it has been quite a while since many of the people has gotten the first shots. But as for its usage and its effectiveness for the general population, I would be a little bit careful, I think. As for people with reduced immunity, people with immunocompromised conditions, people who are in age above 75 years old, or people with underlying conditions who are very old, maybe it can be a valid approach to have a fourth shot so that to keep the immunity. But right now we are passing the peak prevalence of the incidence of the COVID-19 cases in the country, and compared to many other countries and in the United States or other nations, we have quite a low level of the case fatality rate. So maybe for some limited group of the populations with certain conditions, maybe we can, I think, recommend the fourth shot or second booster shot. But for the general population, I think it's a little bit early to call for the general fourth booster shot vaccination for the general population.
So for the general population, we need to wait and see then?
I would go that, yeah.
Right. Dr. Kim, what guidelines do you recommend for in the case of second booster shots for the public?
Well, just the Professor Lee said, there are some controversial issues in the U.S. The government decision on the some approval of the fourth shot. The first one is, so far as I know, there is no, so far as no scientific justification. And then there was no just advisory committee meeting. That was actually usually just happened just previously. And then in terms of just ages, I mean to be just eligible for the fourth shot it's a little bit different. The Pfizer ones just applied for the some approval for the fourth shot for the people with the 65 years of age, but then now the U.S. government actually just approved for the people above the 50 years of age. But then one of the main just evidence that this U.S. government actually just judges upon this fourth shot is the Israeli study. But in that study, a certain group of people got actually benefit by the fourth shot. But those groups are actually the people with the age of 60 years of age. So ages are really different, and then there's not actually enough just the explanation for why the age of the 50 it was actually selected by the U.S. government right now. And then that's why there's some heat, just some debate on this one. And in terms of in Korea side, well, as the professor just Lee said, I think we have to actually just observe what actually other foreign countries actually experiencing, like Israel and the U.S. And then if there's any some benefit is actually demonstrated solidly, then we might just actually just think about just the fourth shot. I mean the booster shot, not for some general just the people, but for the people with the high risk groups and then some elderly people. And then for the some other maybe some future the vaccination procedure, we actually keep in mind that several just recent study results. The first one is several weeks ago, I think a group of scientists actually tested the Moderna vaccines for the some Omicron. And one is actually that very special for this study is that they actually tested some non-human primate. This non-human primate already just primate it has already just experienced 2 shots like the humans. So the first 2 shots was just a regular, just Moderna, just the vaccine. But then to test whether it's the Omicron specific, the vaccine works just better than some original vaccine. So then those scientists actually give the third shot. One of the primate group actually received the original the Moderna just the vaccine, and the other group actually received some Omicron variant specific vaccine. So the original rationale is among the many scientists there's maybe variant specific vaccine would be much efficacious compared to some original vaccine. But in the end, what they found out is that there was no differences. At least, and this is not a human trial, but in the non-human primate study, there was no any superior efficacy compared to the original vaccine. So now we can may just ask a question whether variant-specific the vaccine is really just beneficial or not. And then the next study is that this is actually what we actually talked about the first shot, so-called the second booster shot, is whether it's beneficial for some general public. But then there was at least the data to show that there's not much just the benefit compared to the first shot between just the third shot, the 3-shot program, and then the fourth shot program. So so far there is no just a specific. I mean, there is no just a specific recommendation for the fourth shot. And then for some long-term projection for our everybody is actually curious about what will happen in our future in terms of vaccination. Whether we'll get some very repeated vaccination over maybe for upcoming several years or not. But I think practically, well, the getting the vaccination like every 4 months or 5 months or like 6 months, it's not really just a practical. So then the main just practical thing is that the people are suggesting maybe just an annual shot program, like some flu shot. There might be some probably just acceptable for the general public. And then another the opinion is that some people actually argue that, well, we have actually experiencing some other endemic coronaviruses. Those coronaviruses, some of the coronavirus looks a little bit just fatal in the very long time ago. But now this is endemic and then causing very mild cold symptoms. So that this is the case that we will just maybe experience in the future. So that the thing is that maybe well, instead of just getting just a regular just a booster shot, maybe just what about just any just a variant? I mean, we might just keep being exposed to the just current just viruses or any other just emerging the variants. So then this. But at least now we have some immunity by the some vaccination or like any natural infection. So this immunity will actually protect us at least from just progressing to the severe diseases. So then maybe repeated exposure to the variant will actually play as just a booster shot instead of getting the booster vaccine in itself.
Right, so the exposure to variants itself might actually protect us from COVID-19. Yeah. Professor, starting yesterday, that was Thursday, children aged 5 to 11 here in the country are now eligible for COVID-19 vaccinations. As a doctor yourself, what are your thoughts on vaccinations for children?
I think especially as the school has started now, to keep the school open, I think it's quite nice to have the vaccine available as an option for the children. As for requiring the vaccine, maybe we can be a little bit more careful because even though the children in that age group, even though they contract COVID, the symptom is quite relatively mild. So if we consider the benefit and any possible risk of side effect, then maybe it is not. It is a little bit. We can be on the more safer side not to require vaccine for everyone, but as the COVID-19 transmission is still ongoing and children are all exposed for the infection at the moment. And if we have enough number of children who are contracting COVID-19, then there will be some of the children who might be developing some of the severe cases. And even the proportion is very small, when enough number of size of children are contracting COVID-19 infection, then the absolute number of those children with a more severe symptom can increase as well. So I think it is really nice to still have the vaccine available, and I would recommend people, if there are any parents who are considering vaccines, I would recommend the vaccinations. And also another aspect is it had been the vaccination for children in this age group had been performed in many other countries already. So, and the safety record is quite proven, and we can quite confidently say that it is very safe vaccines. So I would recommend, and also especially for children who have diabetes or any kind of chronic lung conditions or heart conditions, for those children, if they contract the COVID-19 infections, the symptom possibly can be very severe as well. So especially for those children with those conditions, I would really strongly recommend the vaccinations. But for the general public and general school children, to keep school open and to be on the more safer side, I think it is really valid recommendation to have the vaccination for those children in those age groups.
Right, I see. And finally, Dr. Kim, this will be an impromptu question for you. There is much talk about downgrading the country's COVID-19 risk level from 1 to 2. Having said that, when do you believe would be an appropriate time to downgrade our alert level?
Well, I think first we have to look into the what kind of just virus or pathogens actually belong to the some class 1 or class 2, and then I have not looked into that very details, but I think when the this COVID-19 infection, the risk of COVID-19 infection is now just down to the decrease is down to the like influenza virus infection, then we can actually do something like that.
Right, I see. So we'll keep our fingers crossed for that then. All right, Dr. Kim, as always, thank you very much for your thoughts today. Professor, thank you for being with us with
Thank you
your
very much.
thoughts.